says 8 o'clock. Nevertheless, we're going live, and we're live! Welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerder Doug, and tonight I am hanging out with this nerd. Wait, yeah.
Hey, there. Nerdarchy Steve, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm feeling positively charmed, which is the topic of tonight's live chat, ostensibly charm, before we deviate into other things and go off on tangents. Anyway,
As we've been known to do.
right. And we already had some questions from our awesome Patreon supporter, Zip Warlock, so might as well start off with that. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, we could jump in there. We could wait a few minutes. I'm sure people are still just getting on.
All right, well, hey, I can knock one question that seems to come up every week. What am I drinking this week? And it is Peruvian pineapple soda water. It's branded, but they're not paying us, so...
So they don't get the name.
Hey, if there's any beverage companies out there, though, that are looking for nerdy platforms to sponsor, hit us up.
And why?
I like kombucha. It's very good.
And why lockdown's going on, preferably alcoholic.
I don't know. Usually, I tend to drink healthy things. This particular thing is a very good soda substitute. I've lost quite a bit of weight from switching to this from traditional.
Yeah, but how are the sugars in it?
It's really low. It's like a sugar substitute called erythritol or erythritol or something like that.
That sounds like something that definitely gives you brain cancer.
Hey, everything kills you somehow, man. It's only 5 calories, though. It's low on sugar. That's why it is.
Yeah.
Peruvian pineapple, Joe Seiler.
Peruvian. Ooh, fancy. Not me, man. I'm just drinking straight up coffee.
Hey, what kind of coffee, though?
I don't know the kind of, because probably like,
honestly,
nah, we're like not fancy at all.
Are you
man.
Folgers? Is it Taster's Choice?
It's like Folgers or Maxwell House.
Oh my God. Is it Instant Crystals?
No, it's not instant. I don't do instant. But nah, it's nothing fancy. Nothing fancy. And the truth of the matter is, it might not even be what the container says it is. So my wife likes certain brands' containers better than others, so they just get refilled.
I like dark roasts and African beans personally. Not a big fan of South American. They're too acidic for me. I don't like it.
Yeah, my pops would always drink I think it's like Jamaican Mountain Blue Ridge, and it's like $45. It's like $45 a pound, and you go and you get it ground and.
Yeah. Hey, there's actually, wow, this is a topic of some intrigue. Peruvian what pineapple? Fire Axe 25. Do they grow pineapples in Peru? I don't know, but fun fact, this company uses adjectives from the place where they also locally source fair trade coffee beans to describe the fruit flavors in their soda beverages. So if that's some clues, you can go figure out what I'm drinking. Wow. The bullied experience was literally just thinking of us guys, and then we went live. Boom.
Boom.
Like magic.
Into existence. And our Nick is here.
Yep.
He hasn't been making nights as much lately. I think something about work or something.
Yeah, he's a busy guy.
But charm, that is our topic. So what was Zip Warlock's question?
All right. It's got some length to it. When I saw that this week's topic was charm, I thought of Anthony Hopkins in Zorro when he tells Antonio Banderas that the weapon he needs to learn for the next mission is charm. Have you guys had a lot of scenarios in your games where the players had to ditch the armor and attend a lavish ball in disguise in order to steal a map or break into a vault? A scenario where charisma was the prize skill. It spells like charm, the best currency.
The last game I remember where we did that, and I don't even know if it's actually really the last time it happened, was in Ted's game, and a bunch of cultists attacked, and our wizard forgot that in 5e, cantrips are at wills, so they disarmed one of the cultists of their dagger and stabbed them to death with it.
Wow. Wait, that was at like a fancy party?
Yeah, that was at a fancy party.
Was that Ace and Shard Gal?
It was Ace and Shard Gal.
Yeah, he was a adventuring wizard.
He was one of the best characters of all.
The Eyeless Seer.
because the things that Scott would do with that character, beholder surfing
Yeah.
was
Well, it sounded
definitely
like he really played it like an adventuresome wizard. Like he was going to go out there and, get that knowledge and do
he
whatever it took.
he played it like he stole that character. That's how he played it.
Um, which, if anybody's a fun fact, is in Arbor Jade, a free thing over at Nerdarchy the Story. Go pick up right now. Ace Shardgill makes a cameo appearance in that classic adventure.
The blind seer.
Yes, he's the one he's the quest giver. So yeah, for me, that question, I mean, all the time that happens. I mean, you've played with me, and I've talked about it, like, and just from like interacting with the D&D community and RPGers, like, I'm pretty sure the games that I play and run are a lot different than most people. Like, that stuff is more important. It's like, yeah, I'm a pushover. DM Nick would know. He's in the chat. Like, it's not about, like, the fights are cool and exciting, but yeah, it's much more about their interactions with the world. So yeah, that stuff happens all the time. As recently as the last time I played a game, one campaign I ran, that was their quest, was to help a princess like put together a party, a ball. So they had a bunch of missions related to that.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They were party planners.
Yeah.
Or working for a party planner.
Mm-hmm. No, they were the party planners.
So then they had so what kind of missions did they have to go on to complete this, to get this ball going?
They had to get a unique outfit for her to wear to it, because I mean, she's the princess of the Fae. You gotta have a decent thing. So like they went to get magic shoes, which had been stolen, and they had to track those down. They had to cater it, which isn't the first time that has been a quest goal in a campaign I've done. I believe the actually the final two arcs of Ingest Quest, that was their mission, was to cater a wedding. So yeah, that stuff happens all the time.
Super, super important when adventuring is getting your catering on.
Mm-hmm. Players seem to like, I mean, using their, it's like, hey, Firebolt can, roast a boule steak just as well as your enemies.
Yeah. So Nerdarchy has always had a love-hate relationship with the charm spell.
Mm-hmm, yes.
In 5e.
Mm-hmm.
That whole, I don't know. I think Nate dubbed it instantly summon angry mob spell.
Yeah.
It's such a great spell, but it's kind of lame that unless you're a high level enchanter, when you cast it, they're like, "Oh, I was charmed. Now I'm angry."
Yeah. I don't know. I'm curious what the. I'm sure people have asked JC that and stuff, but like, I wonder what the nugget of like why that is. Why was that? I mean, obviously they had to make that decision. Like, well, let's put that in there. So I wonder why. Wow, this chat is abuzz with interesting comments. What do you think? I thought you were going to talk about your your old school use of charm, which is a great argument for why they would do that.
Yeah. Well, so charm used to be so broken in AD&D, right? Because when you cast it, it was based on the recipient's intelligence score, and if their intelligence was super high, you couldn't charm them for very long. But if it was super low, I didn't think it affected them as well either. But if you were like average, middle of the road, it was like the worst because you charmed them for like days and days at a time.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was kind of brutal for DMs at that time, because you could just go collecting villagers essentially. Mm-hmm. And enslaving them, for like 2 to 3 weeks at a time.
Yeah, but I mean, couldn't you do that anyway? It's not like the fault of the spell. Like, unless your DM was like pitched you in such a like, okay, the object of this campaign is to get as many slaves as possible. Like, I suppose, yeah, in that scenario, sure, it's OP, but I mean, like, that's sort of, the direction. Like the players would take it that way, unless you got a really out there DM.
Well, sure, but like, I mean, just the way the mechanics worked. It's like cast a spell, 18 days. They're gonna, they're your friend. They'll do whatever you want, pretty much.
Mhm. Um,
So Honey Drop asked the question: how would you run Marvel Universe RPG game?
yes, I saw that, and I wondered if Honey Drop the Unicorn had some kind of spy software because we were literally just talking about that before we went live.
Yeah, so there is a Marvel
Sort of.
RPG game online
Mhm.
that you can download for free because no one's using it, I guess. There's a website. If you Google Marvel Phase Rip, it'll come up. Download it, play. It's a great system.
Mhm.
If you search our channel, you can find a playlist. We ran 2 seasons, so probably like 24 episodes or so of that game. And then Professor Bill and Comic Book University also ran a couple more seasons as well. I know he's got it like at least one up, but he might have like 2 more in the can.
So I know, yeah, they play and film them remotely, and then he uploads them and probably does some editing and stuff too. He also does a tutorial series that gets super in depth. I mean, I believe he set out to be like the #1 phase rip guy out there, and as far as I can see, he's doing a pretty good job. I mean, his tutorials are very, comprehensive and fun.
Yeah, so I mean that's another thing. He's got a bunch of those you can check out and watch, and you can learn to do it that way. But my go-to superheroes game is Mutants and Masterminds. It's just like it's the most customizable, and it works off a D20, so it's really easy. It's a little front end heavy when you're making characters. Hero Lab is like a godsend for that game because it just makes it so much easier. But other than that, like that's the hard part is building your character, and after you're built, really the only die you need is a D20, and it works pretty easy. And if you've already played D20 games, you'll pick it up fast.
Mhm. So as for how I would run, I mean, actually to tag on your point, I actually like Face Rip the best. That's one of my favorite game systems, like full stop. I love that. It's super easy. It's got the nostalgia factor, and I love Bill's. I think it's pretty much his house rule, like the character creation, right? Like point build sort of thing, which I thought worked awesome because you
Yeah,
can
he
just
had made
tailor it
something
to
up.
like what scale, like you want to play like street level heroes or cosmic heroes or Avenger like global heroes or whatever. So how I would run it, I like making up characters, and I wouldn't want to play the actual like Marvel characters. I think it was a much more fun to make up our own characters, and then you can sprinkle those in and like as Easter eggs and things, and it's sort of like is a gauge of like how you're doing as a hero. It's like, oh, if you run into Spider-Man and it's like, oh man, you actually like helped him out. It's like, wow, that feels awesome. As a player, like because you know who Spider-Man is, and or whatever. So that I think that would be a lot of fun. But yeah, that's a great system.
Honey Drop, you can't unicorn. You're Doug's peoples.
I'm thinking of pitching to my new DM to run a Marvel. Well, yeah, that specifically is exactly what we were just talking about, and it's just all about. I think my philosophy is finding the game system that you like, and that helps you tell the stories that you want to tell. So D&D is good for, and I quote it often in posts and stuff. It's on page 1 of the player's handbook. It's about battling monsters, exploring fantastic locations, solving puzzles, and getting treasure. That's what the game's about. Like all the other stuff's just window dressing. So if you want to, and you could fight, villains, overcome like traps and puzzles. That's fine. Talk to NPCs and you know, gain fantastic abilities as your career goes on. Then that system will probably work good for you. Whereas like Tales from the Loop system wouldn't, because there isn't any combat in it really, and so what I mean. There is, but you get my point.
Someone put out a 5e supplement. Yeah, here it is, 5th edition, 5th of Evolution, new genres for your 5e game. One of them is superheroes, and I believe that is Limitless Adventures.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So they definitely, have some hacks there. I personally, I would probably just use one of the superhero games. Marvel Phase Rip is a lot of fun. I mean,
I
they're
mean, some masterminds might be really good for that group because it is. I mean, it's D20,
yeah,
so
it's
you're going
D
to be really familiar with the mechanics of it.
it's D20. It uses a skill system. It uses a feat system. Once
Mm-hmm.
you once you see how the powers work, it's pretty straightforward. But I like it, and it definitely has a good feel for it. Is it free? No.
So you should probably hit the affiliate Amazon link in the description. Go there.
But I tell you,
Oh, you know what?
Marvel Phase Rip is free though.
Yeah, I have. Here's something that I actually just remember that we tried once or twice when we were a kid is using Marvel Phase Rip to play like D&D because it's like, well, there's Black Knight and weapons and swords. You can have armor, and
Yeah.
that's a pretty damn super heroic D&D set campaign when you think of playing, with those where you guys have like, you can lift like mountains and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean you can, and it's easier to dumb down a system
Yeah.
than it is to go the other way.
Right. Right.
So like just having less powerful characters where if you didn't allow anything above a remarkable and
Yeah.
even limited those, you would be pretty human.
Again, yeah, Bill's system was pretty good for that because it's like, well, in that case, you'd spend not very little of your points on your ability scores, and you'd have more points for their powers. So it's like, sure, you must start off with like awesome armor and a sword, and that's all you got. Then just throw all your points into body armor and like melee weapon slashing or whatever the hell it's called.
See, we did that with second edition Mutants of Mastermind, and we played like fantasy with it. We played Dresden Files with it.
Yeah.
It was super flexible that way.
Yeah, I mean, really, compared to like groups or something, it's like, well, they basically just did all that extra stuff for you with a genre game, right?
Well, you know what though? What makes a system like Mutants and Masterminds easier to convert to other games as opposed to D&D is because it's a classless system.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
point buy systems, you have more ability to customize it and manipulate. So I feel like they're easier to kind of do whatever you want with. Where like if you look like at the D&D game, where it's very structured, where you'd have to reflavor everything, in order to kind of make it work, especially with
And
character
make like
classes.
intricate multi classes to like achieve the thing that you want to do, right? Whereas like classless systems, a lot of times you could start off being really awesome at the thing you want to do, and that's all you can do. But it's
Yes.
like you could shoot like laser blasts that do like 1,000,000 points of damage, but it's like you have like one hit point and you're no skills or knowledge or anything.
Oddly enough, like Mutants and Mastermind did a good job of addressing that
Oh, okay.
because it was point buy, but you had a power level that you were playing, right? And
Oh,
like
right.
so 10 was a default, and that meant you had X amount of points, but at the same time, like that your PL also set like hard limits on your stats. So like, and it also had a little bit of a swing, so you could offset and have a lower chance of hitting, but hitting harder. So you could swing it up and down by whatever your power level was. Like so 10, you could go up and down by that 10. But obviously, if you put, if you swing all your points to do damage, then you're probably never going to hit. And vice versa. You could be hitting all the time, but you're not doing any damage because it's a 0. But you could do like a 5-15, and it still kind of worked. But like I guess the default was 10-10 where with your swing stats.
Okay.
So even within that, it wasn't like you could just totally load up in certain areas. So they did a good job in that regards.
Yeah, it sounds like a good system. That sort of thing interests me. Like what the game systems do. I find myself kind of drawn to that sort of things when I'm looking at.
Yeah, I know you like when you open up the book and it's like it just tells you what the game is meant to do.
Yeah. I think it's foolish that it would not. Like, can you imagine like bringing a Monopoly home and you just open? It's like, okay, there's like a bunch of dollar bills in here and some dice and.
It's almost like a mission statement.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. So like, what is this game designed to do?
Yeah, and I always try to think of it like if that was your first, they always have the like, what's a role playing game, and which is great, but you know, like knowing like what you're supposed to do when you play the game. And like we were just talking earlier this afternoon about like, um, I came across a passage in a game that I was looking at, and it just basically said like, oh, if the players go anywhere else but these locations, feel free to improvise. It's like, or just tell them that's not part of this game, so you're not going to learn anything. Like just blew. I was like, mind blown.
Go back. You're going the wrong way.
Like it never occurred to me.
Well, I guess there's something to it. Like, you could actually play out a scene, right? And it doesn't matter if you're playing, like, a D&D adventure or, in that other system. But, the players are on a specific quest, and they get this idea that for whatever reason, they're going to go check out the windmill because they think that has something to do with it, but actually has nothing to do with it. Like, I feel like a lot of DMs would play out, like, 2 hours of them doing nothing at the windmill. And I guess there is no real reason for you to not go, well, you can go to the windmill, no matter how much time you spend, it's not actually going to do anything there because there's nothing going on.
Yeah, it's probably more beneficial to that because conversely, your other options are either making something do happen at the windmill, or they're going to spend 2 hours there and just be disappointed because nothing happens, and then they'll be like, well, why didn't anything happen? It's like, because I wasn't part of the adventure. I don't know. It's just a windmill. You guys, I never, you wanted to go there for 2 hours and like search all around it and stuff. So, but you feel like compelled, like, well, I should have something happen here, right?
Yeah, but then if you make something happen, then they'll think it matters
to
the adventure. So you only push them further off track.
Yeah, I know we're getting way off track, but like, I almost kind of think of it as like reality show RPGs, and I don't want to play that. Like, I don't want the DM just following my character around 24/7 in case something happens. It's like, just skip to the part where something happens, man. Like, like if the player, like if you go and nothing happens, and you talk to the other players, and it's like the quest doesn't progress. It's like, okay, like I don't need to know like every minute of this guy's life. Like, come on.
Yeah,
where's the adventure at?
Definitely seen that too, where you get into a game.
But some people love that. I'm not judging anything. It's like, I like. I'm not saying like, oh, I'm just all about the rolling dice. I like role playing, but it's like I like there to be something to do. Like some
structure.
Yeah, some goal. I'll take your adventure hooks. I'm a great player. If you ever need a player in a game, I won't. I will go rescue the blacksmith's kidnapped child, or whatever. I always think it's funny, and I've told you a million times about how my friend group, like, they always want to start businesses, and like, we can make a lot of money, and I always think like, you just did like the dungeon crawl and made like 500 gold, but you want to start like a storefront selling like woodworking, like driftwood sculptures. It's like, there's no way you're gonna make as much money. It's like, if that's your guy's concern, keep going on the adventures. You're making hundreds and hundreds of gold more than you would otherwise.
We've had that come up in our games too, where one of the players did do that, and they started to, but then they just realized they made so much more as an adventure.
Yeah, but that's why people go on an adventure. Hey, listen, if I could go out and just start breaking pottery jars around town and finding gold, yeah, I'll go out there and go on an adventure. You could go on one adventure and retire for the rest of your life, but like in a D&D, based on like the gold per day, like laborers and stuff. You could live like a lavish lifestyle for like the next like 100 years if you like went on one decent adventure and survived.
Well, that's true, but here, devil's advocate here, right?
Sure.
Say someone told you could do that, right? You just break open the pots and there's money in them, right? And you go to break up the first pot, but I stab you in your side with a knife. Mm-hmm. And every time you go to break up a new pot, someone stabs you. So, like, well, that's the trade-off. Like, if you're living the peasant life, no one's trying to stab you.
So in that situation, I'll tell you what you need to do. Become a potter. Breaking those pots, man, and be like, ooh, they keep every day. I'm selling out of these ceramic jars. People just keep putting coins in them and breaking them. Business is booming.
Yeah, so
adventuring is dangerous, Fragner. That's what I tell everybody. And they're like, what should I do? My character died. Make a new one, man.
Make a new one.
Adventuring ain't easy.
Yeah, you learned that not too long ago.
Mm-hmm. I do not get. Look, everybody's like, there's so many characters that I want to play. It's like, well, then your guy dies. There's your opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to the epic death, or bust philosophy. Like, people are like, well, it sucks if a guy gets killed to a random goblin. Why? I mean, you're putting your, it's like, hey man, everybody gets a lucky shot. That one just hits you in the heart. Boom. That's dramatic, right? You didn't think, it's like you're thinking you might die when you go face the big bad evil antagonist.
How many character deaths have you had?
Up until like the last couple of years, like maybe one in my whole life, but like since starting to play more online with Nerd Aggie, there's like a dozen.
Oh, that many?
Yeah, I don't care. I just throw myself in danger because it's like, well, that's part of the fun of it. I mean, I'm not gonna jump off a cliff and like, even if my one of my you're one of my closest friends. If you fell off a cliff, I wouldn't just jump off and try to be like, well, maybe something will happen, like divine intervention. I'd be like, oh shit, sorry. Oh, excuse me. I mean.
Well, that's disheartening to hear.
Well, I'm saying, I mean, if it was like certain death, and like in it's like in a D&D saying, you're like, hey, I'm a barbarian. I might actually survive the 1,000-foot fall, which is totally cool. But or so maybe somebody will cast Featherfall, or like the gods are like in real life. That's not gonna happen. We would both just splatter to death. I'll carry on the Nerdarchy name and make a memorial, like the Dave Bryant Memorial.
Perfect. I think I've lost like 3 characters in 5.8 that I can think of.
Yeah.
A dozen? Maybe you're just not good at the game.
No, I mean, okay, so like one of my Mesbagdu, one of my favorite characters, died in Dragon Heist when I opened a door. There was a gray ooze in there. Spoilers. It like lashed out at me, critted, and it killed. I mean, you're only first level, so it just killed me with massive damage. And his last words were, "Boy, that's disgusting," and it was just like dead. Jumpanin Waters Fine died from an owlbear's screech and a critical fail and a death save. Trying to think. Maybe it wasn't a dozen. Probably half dozen.
We played a meat grinder game, and I definitely had a character die at the end of that.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know which character never died though? The guy with 6 Constitution in Ted's game that everybody thought was a gunner. I survived the whole time, no problemo. My gifts, mind sorcerer.
The whole time being like one session though, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I like one shots are great because it's like just throw everything you got, like try all the abilities. That's why I like trying new things because it's like I'm gonna use I use the Sound of Ill-Omen, all the spells, like everything. It just went balls to the wall. It's like, well, we're not gonna play again, so even if you die, at least I got to go out trying all the toys.
Yeah, no, I agree. So Worm had a lame death because he died off camera. I
don't consider that a death. I always believed he lived then.
Who knows? So there's that one. Who else died? Oh, Tony Two Tusks. He bought it to the lava pit, for sure. And then I feel like there's got to be at least one more. But I agree. Like, if you're playing this game, you need to do stuff and make stuff happen.
Yeah, right. And hey, pro tip: if you play one shots or play with different people, you're not dead in them other games. So I've replayed guys all the time. Good. I mean, I've played Mesmagdu like as different classes and different, just like I'll bump them up and down in level. It's just a character that you like to play.
Makes sense. Why not?
Yeah.
I think most of my deaths are kind of been like in short-term games or, one shots.
Mesmagdu died in Dragon Heist, which is a great adventure. That's what they're playing on Watcher. Which, hey, man, I don't want to jinx it.
Don't jinx it. You did not hear it here first. whatever it is.
It's just on the internet amongst us, right?
Pretty much, that's it. Just us and a few of our friends.
Yeah.
So, do you have any funny charm stories from any of your games?
I was thinking I don't. I was like, I rarely cast or have characters like that are enchanters like that. And most of the people I play with rarely do either. I really don't have a lot of stories about it. I was thinking more of like charms, like boons and little items and things is mostly what I thought of. But I don't really have a lot. I've been charmed, and I'm like you and other people. It's like, well, actually, no. I take that back. I'm not. I don't try. Like, I do want to like try to find a loophole. So when I used to play Adventures League a lot, I got charmed by an incubus, and he said, "I want you to like attack the strongest person in your party." So I started punching myself because I was like, well, clearly I'm the strongest. Vengeance. Stuff like that.
Weak
But yeah,
sauce.
what's that?
Weak sauce.
Well, hey,
I'm always honestly, I'm always secretly hoping that I found the saving throw versus charm or suggestion.
I think every player should be, right? I mean, it's fun. It's like you can not feel bad about it because I was charmed.
There
It's
was
not like you did anything wrong. You
there
failed,
was
so.
I've definitely had some times in my games. Matter of fact, that's when I wrecked the party the most. It just so happened like I ran an adventure that I had made up, and one of the end bosses did use suggestion or charm or one of those effects on the Gobelos in my game, which they hit really hard, and they just wrecked the party. And then I ran a pre-written adventure after that, and
Orcus Class.
yeah, Orcus Claws, which that's one of his abilities. So it's not. So it wasn't like I even planned it. And again, same thing happened, and Anthony's character almost took out the whole party.
I guess I'm not a fan of it as a combat application, as a player or a DM, or even like in a player where another player casts it, because it's like I just don't. It really gets to me sometimes, like when you're playing with a lot, where it happens too frequently, like people want to like befriend the monsters or charm the monsters or like sit down and have tea with the monsters. Like, just kill the damn thing. I mean, I get sometimes you want to talk your way out of it, but it's like come on, like let's just fight the thing. So yeah, it just makes it like awkward, I think, sometimes with the charming. But as an out of combat thing, it's definitely useful to like infiltrate a place or whatever. And in that regard, like say you charm your way into like a noble's party, like past the guard, right? And it's like, oh, where's Offie is mad at you. It's like, well, now you're in the party and like you mingling with the people. Are they gonna walk in and like accost you and be like, hey, that guy, blah blah blah, and accuse you and stuff and make a big scene? Maybe not, or maybe they would. I don't know. It adds more drama and not in combat and more interesting scenarios, I guess. I would say.
I know. Falker was pretty good for using suggestion and twinning it on my monsters, and using them as weapons.
I'm surprised there wasn't more. Like Ted has said, there wasn't as much like inter-character like story development in your campaign, and he was surprised too. And it's like, yeah, with all those situations, like man, like that, like, oh, remember that time like our good buddies like nearly murdered all of us in like 6 seconds flat. It's like, oof, that'd be, even knowing they were charmed, it's like, well, there would be like there would be some
like
interesting space to explore there.
That game was full of a lot of great players that were kind of playing their own game. So,
was it a lot of like they would talk to you but not to each other?
No, they would talk to each other too, but like their goals were really different, right? So the Gobelos, their only goal ever was getting high and fuckery, right? Mm-hmm. So they were never really going to drive the plot as much. They were more like comedic relief and disruption, more or less. And then Ted's character was really bookish and just wanted to seek out knowledge, which like that was starting to go into an interesting place, but it got there later because like he started learning.
Characters are like that, aren't they? I mean, that's probably like reflective of him. Like they always want to like find the secret knowledge of things.
Yeah, so he started getting into void speech.
Yeah, he had the Ring of Hork
and void magic. Yeah, so he started going down that road a little bit.
Yeah, didn't he make a library, but he had like secretly like woven like void things into like books that were in the shelves there and stuff.
A
Yeah, like that
church.
kind of sounds so awesome. That's a what a great story
It
on
was a
that.
church, but yeah, but also is God is a God of knowledge. So a lot of that was kind of like intertwined church slash library. But the thing was, he didn't know he was doing it.
Yeah.
So, because he was under the influence of this dark power.
Oh, he didn't? I thought he like knew, but he was like
No,
compelled to. Like, he didn't like he was, not like
he wasn't fully aware of everything he was doing.
but Ted was.
Ted the player was,
Oh.
but his character was doing a lot of that stuff on a subconscious level.
Yeah, did that ever pay off? That sounds incredible.
Well, we only have one session left, and you know, he was going down that road, but it happened really late in the game.
Oh.
So, and again, 6, 7 players. We're only kind of meeting once a month when we're meeting regularly. So I feel like it's harder to do that stuff.
Hork is an entity that has shown up a lot in your guys' games and lore, right?
It's showed up a little bit. I mean, really, and it's funny because it was really just based off of a Ring of Spell Storing, which, like, that chart in the DMG that, like, give magic items different properties and traits?
Yeah.
That's all the Ring of Hork is.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think it's like an artifact level thing in one of our like Mage Forge Volume 1 or something
we
like
we
that.
later went back and remade it and amped it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But like it gave the person the ability. So I think like I rolled and there are some like traits that you can get and they're like a little bit more magic. And one of them was like understand a language.
Mm-hmm.
So it was deep speech. The spells that were already in it were things like
Edward's Black Tentacles.
yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then it was like when I described it, it's like 3 different tentacles intertwined with each other, made of different metals. And when you looked at it out of the corner of your eye, they would move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe the art for it looks like 3 different colored like worms made of metal, which really is it's creepy, and I like that art.
Oh yeah, maybe it was worms, not tentacles. Worms.
Yeah.
And one version might have been tentacles.
Yeah, right, but yeah, they just look like earthworms all like wriggling together. Like, ugh, that thing's creepy looking.
At
Poor
first,
Magic, I think I gave it to somebody at the castle. Had that, as I recall, maybe.
Yeah.
I was giving out items like crazy.
it first appeared in Maze of Mandoon.
Yeah, that's right.
Old classic.
Mm-hmm. Which is over on the Nerd. Hey, you got your game coming up, in a couple weeks? Your monthly one-shot?
I do, at the end of the month. I always do mine the last Sunday
Yeah.
at 2 p.m. Eastern.
It'll either be here before you know it, or it'll seem like eons from now.
Time is so weird now.
Yes, it is. I feel like we just imploded the reactor core of the Starship Enterprise. Sorry, I've been watching a lot of original series reruns. But they went back in time for the first time by doing that. A cold start of the engine. And they just it was so like hand wavy too. They're just like, Captain, it looks like we're going back in time. And they're like, huh, we might need to do that again sometime. Well, go forward, It's just like that. Just I think they went back like 3 days too, and they were just like, oh well.
Shit happens. What are you gonna do?
That's what happens when you're exploring space and seeking new life, new civilizations.
Lols.
Going. Or no one has gone before. Do you know what you're gonna? Do you have any ideas what you're gonna run?
Nah, I'll write that stuff an hour before game.
I've been using the Patreon rewards. That's been hella fun for me.
I've done a bit of that as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, what did I run last time? I feel like I ran something from the Patreon rewards. I just don't remember what.
Was it Planar Zoo? You like that one a lot.
No, it wasn't Planar Zoo, but I have run that a few times. I ran that one at the castle.
Yeah. Next month, I don't know what we're calling it yet. Right now, it's the Garden of Statuary with that really cool art.
Oh yeah, we had the theme, but we need to name it, I guess.
It'll emerge once I get deep into the putting it together.
Well, there's definitely some cool things in that one.
And you guys, you know me, I'll find a fancy font to go with it.
My favorite, those fancy fonts.
That's the typography. For all you typography nerds out there.
Yeah. It just makes me think of my brother because in college he had a typography professor that he hated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who, Jeremy or Ryan?
Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think my other brother cares very much about typography. To be honest with you.
He doesn't even know what typography is. Fragoneer's been through Maze of Mandoon twice. That is cool, man.
Yeah, I've run that one quite a few times.
It's nice having like those go-to adventures, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Like, it's
Just
definitely
to see like what people do different. It's probably fun, and then like maybe you think of something you want to try different next
well, it
time.
is. It's always different how people handle it. Also, though, when that one was written too, there's like there's a handful of different ways the maze can look, which
Mhm.
and it has minor effects on how you interact with it. So that it can be a little bit different, and also the nature of the maze is it's a magical labyrinth. So map keeping is pretty useless,
Yeah.
which is just the way I like it.
Yeah, I was gonna say because we don't use maps.
Yeah. Well, for that one, we have encounter areas that are mapped.
Right.
But once
Right.
you get beyond them, they don't really matter as much. Plus, the other cool thing is, well, spoilers, but the nature of the maze allows the master of the maze to more easily navigate it and be a jerk.
Yeah. So basically, it's designed to make it DM friendly without having maps and clever players and be like, wait a minute, that hallway wouldn't go to.
Well, also, there's some hit and run tactics that happen, and because of the nature of the maze, it is really hard to follow anyone through it
Mm.
because it just changes.
Yeah. So you've played a lot of games lately. Have you ran many games recently, or are you kind of getting a break? Like, it seems like you always go and like sort of spurt through the like DMing like 4 times a week, or not at all. Like, it seems like it's a very yoga.
I don't think I've DM'd since my last fan game.
Really? Not
Yeah.
even like the family game,
Oh
or
yeah, yeah. I did a bunch of those, but we haven't done that in a
isn't
while.
that so much laid back though? When it's just like like totally real. Like, they're not even like other like D&D files. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, they're just people that like to play once in a while. you know, very
Yes.
laid back. That's what my home group's like. I like it.
So I ran a bunch of those close together, and then we
Mhm.
haven't played in a while because we've been all separated for the past like what is it, month now, 2 months now.
Yeah,
Um,
50. I think it's like 50 something days.
yeah.
60 days.
So for that, we'd have to like figure out the online thing. I mean, I've got to figure it out, but they'd have to figure out the online
Right,
thing.
right. Yeah,
So,
that's all they've done for a long time. So
but one of my players in that game is also in Ted's game, and I think they recently did it online.
oh yeah,
They did a Zoom call, yeah. Which I mean, three of the players and two of the players in the DM are at Ted's house, so
Mhm.
that kind of helps. And then my nephew, he would have zoomed in, and then I think it's Josh and his son would have zoomed in as well. But now, like, especially the kids, like they're all getting really good at Zoom, whether they want to or not. So that's how they do everything for
they're gonna
school.
surpass us. They're gonna supplant everyone. Um,
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking back to the topic of charms too. Like, I use this a lot. A lot of my games is the like charms. Like just one-time things or like minor magical things.
Or like the magic items we made up and put into one of our products.
Yes, I believe that's also Mage Forge Volume One, along with the Ring of Hork. Um, but yeah, those are actually pretty cool because it's like I think Ted maybe wrote a lot of those, and like they're real, kind of thematic and flavorful. Like I mean, like one's like an acorn or a nut or something that you plant it in the morning, and it does something for the day. I like that kind of stuff. Um, just a consumable magic item, I guess. Essentially, is what they are, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
all they
yeah.
are.
Yeah, well, they have a lot of questions today, huh?
Put question in front of your question so we can
Yeah.
pick them out.
Let's see. That's not a question, but a comment that I have a alternative perspective for from Chris Frame. Has trouble with saving throw spells. The bad guys have an odd tendency to save most of the time. Then buff your party because that never fails. You're
Yeah.
never going to waste a spell slot making your companions better.
It's it's just less sexy.
I don't think so. I love being a support character. It's like, hey, I didn't waste a single spell slot. I can count several of those great accomplishments as partially responsible because I helped them get up. I love doing buffs with enhance ability, bless and haste and all that stuff. Help action, help
It's
the party, help your friends do stuff. It's not all about you.
although buff spells just aren't as good as they used to be because of the concentration. You can't do it. You
Well,
can't
yeah, you can't have multiple buffs, sure.
you can, yeah, but like say this round you buff the party or you buff somebody, right? Well, next round you can't do it again because you're already concentrating.
Yeah, help them. This is a help action.
Ugh, the health action is generally terrible.
Why?
It would be better
If
if
you're a wizard and you want to conserve your spell slots and stuff, then help the fighter in his attack action get advantage. Maybe they'll get a crit. Maybe it's the champion got, you know, quadruple chances to get a crit.
so to use the help action, like to attack. Do you have to then engage the enemy?
No,
I
you
don't
have to be
remember.
within 5 feet of the target.
Yeah. Oh, so you
No, I'm sorry, 5 feet of the person you're helping. So you
okay?
can just stand behind.
So
them.
you can
Like,
stand behind
basically,
them.
You can just stand behind him and be like, "Yeah, come get it, man!" Duck back behind.
And then it just walks around the fighter to whack you in the head.
Think like the character, not
Yeah.
like the game mechanics.
No, thank you. No, I just generally think you have better things
But you
to do,
could use
even
your move.
cantrips.
So you're standing behind the fighter. I'm going to help him, and then
Run
move
away.
back.
That's true. You could definitely do that. But I do feel like you have more fun things to do than the help action.
I mean, hey, there's a whole subclass based around it. If you're a rogue mastermind, you can help 2 times around, baby.
Yes, you could. That's actually when it's a little bit more useful. Because like if you roll to do something and someone else rolls to do something, it's kind of the same thing.
Oh yeah, but I mean, think about it in this situation. Like a lot of people don't know what to do. I was watching a game the other day, and like, the enemy was either immune or resistant to fire and poison, and that was like, the caster primarily used like fire and poison spray, and they're like, none of my spells don't work. It's like stab them, punch them, help your guy. I mean, you can do other stuff. It's like you can help your companions do stuff, and then you are contributing. Like, or if you're like fighting something that's resistant to magic weapons, you don't have a magic weapon, but that guy does, help him. Like,
Yeah, in those situations, it makes a lot of
right.
sense.
So there is. I didn't mean it's like I wouldn't make a character like all I'm ever going to do is help, but it is something you can do. You don't realize.
So Chris Frame, aid works as a great healing spell as well as non-concentration buff. Yeah, I have a human cleric of Mobiet who just got second level spells, and every day I cast aid at least once. Because in my opinion it is one of the best spells in the game.
Absolutely.
The fact that you can just keep recharging it, and
Is that the one that does it? It like actually increases your total hit point. Like your hit point max.
yeah, it increases your hit point max.
Yeah, so that's huge. It's not even like temporary hit points. It's like, nope, you got them all day.
Yeah, here's an extra 5. So yeah, even when you take your short rest, you can refill it. Healing refills it, so it's definitely nice.
Mm-hmm. And I think our unintentional homebrew rule for heroism is definitely a house rule that I would always have at my table. Which was you just keep getting the hit points.
Oh yeah.
Conscious because that was awesome.
I don't think they know what you're talking about though.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, we were playing a game, and I had cast heroism on a barbarian, and they had gone down, and we weren't sure. So we were like, well, he gets the hit points, at the start of his turn. So we were just kind of like Undertaker, sitting up and kept going, and I think he came up and back to life essentially like 2 or 3 times.
It was 2 or 3 times. Yeah. So heroism gives you temporary hit points every round.
Yeah.
The barbarian had heroism on them, and they kept getting dropped.
Right.
And
right, you don't get it if you're dropped.
But because we weren't really sure what the rules were, Well, I always just rule in favor of the players generally, so I was like, sure, you get back up. And then we just knock them back down.
Yep.
It probably saved the party's lives.
Mm-hmm. That was fun.
Bugbears are no joke.
No, that's right.
It's those long limbs.
Yes.
But yeah. So sometimes getting the rules wrong is much more fun than getting them right.
Mm-hmm.
Depending what you're playing for.
Okay. Trying to think of other charm. Is the thing that the enchanters do? That's not a charm. That's pretty cool. It's similar to a charm, but that's a really awesome ability.
I know you love that ability, the hypnotic gaze.
Yeah, hypnotic gaze. Oh my god, that's so cool.
Yeah, we've even ripped that off. I should say sampled. We sampled it for ideas for things, and it's a low level ability too. Hypnotic gaze.
Yeah, I think you get it right off the bat.
Second level, yeah. Starting second level, when you choose this school, your soft words and enchanted gaze can magically enthrall another creature. As an action, choose one creature that you can see within 5 feet of you. If the target can see or hear you, it must succeed a wisdom saving throw against your wizard spell save DC or be charmed by you until the end of your next turn. The charmed creature's speed drops to 0 and the creature is incapacitated and visibly dazed.
Yeah, I like those kind. Like if I was going to, play a character that utilize charming things, I guess I'd go all in and like like a Bard of Glamour or like an Archfey Warlock somewhere. It's like that is what they do.
Or an enchanter.
Because usually they have more class features that not only like you mentioned earlier, get around like, oh, they're mad at you. It's like it just like helps you play a character like that better, like. But that being said, I've also played in one shots where it's like, oh, I'm gonna play like a social character with all these charms, and then it's like an action heavy game. Like, well, this guy sucks. So there's that caveat too.
So someone asked if the hypnotic gaze would work in conjunction with the assassinate ability. I do not believe it would, because the assassinate ability works when you don't. It's when you haven't gone or when you're surprised. I think it's when you're surprised.
I mean, I guess if you walked up, like if you approached somebody on the street and gave them your hypnotic gaze, and then also while they were charmed, like if it wasn't in combat, you're just like, hey, engage some NPC on the street, hypnotize them and just stab them in the face with a dagger.
Yeah,
I would probably rule that they were surprised, and you weren't like, they hadn't acted in initiative yet.
But that's the whole thing with that whole ability. Like, their ability works. If they haven't acted yet, they get advantage. If they're surprised, it's a crit if you hit them.
So this brings up sort of a noodly idea, like, it's really a sort of arbitrary on the DM for that too. Like, the DM often is the one that calls for initiative, and like, like in a situation like that, would you, like, if players like, okay, I want to use my hypnotic gaze and then like stab them, it's like, would you make them roll initiative and be like, well, you're going to try to do that, but we need to go round by round? Or like, at what point, like when you say it's time to roll initiative, it has like an impact on the game and like how things go down, right?
Yeah, so I would say it kind of depends on the circumstances in the game.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys are sitting down with someone who could potentially be hostile and you're at a tavern, for instance, mm-hmm. and you're like, I use hypnotic gaze, then you would use hypnotic gaze if they weren't expecting something to go wrong. And also
right.
Something like that is kind of subtle, I would say.
Yeah, right. Like, you probably just start talking to somebody and then like,
yeah. Compared to, well, if you start casting a spell, and it's clear, then it's like, oh, roll initiative. So yeah, if you do something that someone can react to, then it's definitely initiative time.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it too. It's not necessarily like an indicator like combat's beginning. It's like, no, there's a there's a question of the order of things. To be fair, even amongst other players, when they're like, "Well, I'm going to try to stop him from doing this," it's like, okay, well then roll initiative and we'll see what order you go in. I mean, that seems reasonable. Yeah, I saw a question pop up.
Yeah, Tom Harris. How do you feel about a dungeon or maze whose layout is actually a spell form designed to enthrall the players as soon as they complete the maze?
If they know or you have any indication at all that they might be able to find out that that is the case, then that's pretty cool. If not, then that's kind of bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, one, there should definitely, like, they should have a chance to not have that happen
Yeah,
to a certain extent.
right. Or at least find out like some clue about, there's a danger if you follow the whole path through the maze or whatever.
And also too, like, what is the goal with having them be enthralled? What is the objective? What are you trying to do? What's the point? It is much cooler if when they're going through the maze, if there's clues, kind of like you said, that something bad's going to happen on the way out, so that they could try and figure something out. But if it's just like, you win this thing, bad thing happens,
And you might even do the thing. You could have just been like, okay, at the start of the adventure, you're enthralled. But,
yeah.
yeah.
What is the point? Why are they being enthralled?
Right.
What exactly does enthralled mean? In this instance, because in D&D it can mean some different things.
Right.
So, but always, like, you don't want to rob the players of agency, and they didn't have a chance to interact or do something, unless the only time I say it's kind of okay if the idea is to lead to more adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want your players to do something specific, right? Trying to make it happen in the game can be very difficult. For instance, Ted wanted to do a Ghost Walker campaign where you play as the dead characters, but he wanted to kill everybody in a combat and then have it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Which is almost a terrible way to do it, because it never quite goes the way you want. As the GM, there will be good rolls, there will be bad rolls, and it gets to a point where the players will realize that they never really had any choices, so everything they did didn't matter. And so it's almost as if you'd have been better off just telling them they were dead, and maybe letting them tell you how they died, or maybe you set the scene, they tell you how they died. And now you're playing as the dead characters, right?
Yep.
Because you it's so much different when you kind of like pretend that they have agency, and once they realize they never really did, I think players tend to get kind of annoyed, and it just feels like you wasted their time. All the cool shit that they just tried to do or did it doesn't matter all of a sudden.
Yeah. Right. I 100% agree. Yeah, where you start and like it kind of back to what we were saying earlier about like that like a reality show thing. It's like you can skip around in time. You can I take a lot of inspiration from old modules. Actually, were a lot like that. They'll give you the history, like I think it's what's it called, like the Palace of the Silver Princess is one of my favorites. Like there's this land and blah blah blah, and like eons ago and yada yada. And like now the kingdom's cursed and it's in this magical stasis and there's a sword made of ruby and you're at the dungeon entrance. Like, it's like you didn't have to role play like, should we take this quest? Or like, maybe we can negotiate for more gold. Let's go shopping before we go. It's like, yeah, you did all that. Like, just play, here's the adventure, Like there's a big value in that, I think.
And there's a time and place for kind of both.
Yeah.
If you're doing a one shot, absolutely, you're at the dungeon. We're not going shopping. We're not negotiating. We've got X amount of hours to do this game and get through it.
Right.
And we're not stopping in the middle because you went freaking shopping.
But like you said, I mean, to your point earlier, though, like with the, oh, you're going to fight and get killed. And then there's an adventure like that, too, where I think you play as the Circle of Eight from Greyhawk. And like, you start off with that, but it's like you're fighting, like, the gods of evil, and it's like they'll kill you within like 1d10 rounds or whatever. It's like, well, then why even do it? Like, just it'd be more fun to have the players tell you what went down, like you said. Like, just set the scene like, oh, you're clearly outmatched, like, and your characters face their demise. Like, how did they die in glorious battle against
Yeah.
insert creature here or whatever?
So, Cameron F. One of my first adventures was like that. My friends hated it. LOL. Yeah, I know, because it's dumb. That's why they hated it. And I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm saying it's dumb. And the reason I know is because who've played a long time have all done dumb stuff like that, and had to learn the hard way. Usually, that it's like, oh, this is dumb, or we do it and we think it's cool. It's not, and then we have it done to us and we're like, oh, really not cool. It was kind of lame in the end. So Tom Harris kind of followed up with. I was thinking about. Really?
Yeah.
Wow. How can we even be friends? That's a classic.
Yeah.
So
yes, he was thinking about the labyrinth.
Yeah. So yeah, if you come out of the labyrinth, you complete it, and you're kind of enthralled in the sense that you don't know what just happened. That's fine, but I still think you should like do things that give them clues to try and figure out, or to know that a piece of their memory is missing. Because why do that if there's not a reason for it? Like, don't do it without a purpose. Make it foreshadowing for something that's going to happen in the future. Maybe give them glimpses of things that have happened. Have them run into NPCs or monsters later on from the labyrinth, and they know they were there, but the players don't. So you can have these cool moments. But if you're just like, you did the whole adventure now, you don't remember it, haha, never references again. Like there's kind of like no point to it.
Yeah, I mean, being a good GM, I feel like, is about earning the players' trust and they trust that you're going to help them tell the story of their characters, right? So, like in a situation like, I mean, so the comments. And then any judgment, I don't know what the details are, but like, I killed them so they could serve a demon lord and gain cool demonic powers from being their minions. It was cinematic, but it did not feel good in play. Like, so did you guys discuss that in a session 0? I mean, I wouldn't like that if I was like, hey, we're gonna play D&D, and then you like get slaughtered by, okay, now you're serving a demon lord. It's like, I don't want to, maybe my guy was like, I don't want to do that. Like, that's, I mean, maybe some people just have problems like with demons in general. I wouldn't find that fun. And it's cinematic too, and it's like, well, the story of the characters is not the story that you think when you plan your campaign. Like, how they react to everything is what the story is. So ever since I started thinking of games like that, that's really helped me DM better. I feel more comfortable with it.
I think we've all come up with ideas that we kind of like think they're cool.
Yeah.
But then they're not. They're just not, right?
Because it's always you against multiple players. You could be the smartest dude around, but you still got like 4 or 5 other players thinking of the same things. I mean, it happened just in our game the other day. The guys are like, well, wait a minute, wouldn't this have happened? And like, this guy said this. It's like, I honestly, hey, spoilers, I fucked up. Like, yep, they're right. I totally forgot. That doesn't make any sense and stuff. Something I thought was cool, or that I poorly planned, or whatever. It happens.
So
like crap.
Crazy Hermit DM. Like the Hangover movie, but with Labyrinth. Exactly. Like, that makes it meaningful and cool as they piece it together, and it becomes a mystery or a riddle to solve, which is a lot of fun. Now, I did run a one-shot a couple times where I do kill the players right in the beginning of the game. It's called Valhalla Awaits. And the game starts with, hey, player, describe your death to me. How did you die in battle? Or maybe what might be holding you back from going to Valhalla, right? So there's like no pretense to that. Like, I tell them, this is what we're doing, here we go. And then they go through an adventure, which is basically them like having done enough to almost get to Valhalla, but they need to overcome one more thing in order to do it. They need the scales to tip just a little bit, and that's what the adventure is kind of about. And at the end of the adventure, if they're successful, they finally get the Valhalla.
That sounds really fun.
So,
well, you know what is not in question is that it is past the time, and that we will be back tomorrow. Dave will be back at noon, like he is Monday through Friday, with another special guest to talk about nerdy stuff, take questions from the chat, and then next Monday we'll, some combination of he, Ted, and I will be back here to talk about another topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But so until then,
Stay nerdy.
stay nerdy.